What's up, everybody? I go by the name of Kofi Khae, and you are watching The Illest Lines.
So first and foremost, again, I definitely want to welcome you to The Illest Lines. I appreciate you being on here with me, sir.
Thank you. It's an honor. It's a privilege. I enjoy these kind of opportunities for sure.
Oh, yeah, me too. And that's actually part of the reason why I created this, because I wanted to be able to, be a part of other people's opportunities, be a part of other people's, lives in regards to their artistry, their creativity.
Yes.
And this is definitely one of them. You are now my second out of the country, interview. So I'm looking forward to this.
Good stuff. Well, you know what? There are, the number of extraordinary Canadian Christian hip hop artists, and for myself, I'm constantly discovering new artists, people who have been grinding for a while, but, have been flying under the radar, but just gifted.
Right. Yeah, same here. And that's actually part of the reason why I ended up, reaching out to you and a few others, countless others now, because I've been doing this for almost a year. It'll be a year in November. And, it's just been something wonderful. I've been seeking out different people, and I'm looking at their stats and whatnot. I'm like, man, you've been around this long, and how come I haven't heard you? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just, luck of the draw. Sometimes it's just actually not even really listening to that much music at all sometimes.
Right.
So,
Yes.
Yeah, it could definitely be one of those things. But I do kind of want to take it back a little bit with you, if you don't mind. First of all, I do understand that you are, you live in Ottawa, is that correct?
Yes, Ottawa, Canada.
Okay, born and raised?
I was born out east, so the east coast of Canada, Fredericton, New Brunswick. And that's by way of Ghana, so Ghana, West Africa. Yeah. So
right.
My parents moved to Ghana in the 80s. I have two older sisters who were born in Ghana. My parents moved to Canada for education, and I was born here.
Nice.
But yeah, basically grown up in Ottawa though, because I was like 10 when I moved here. So.
Oh, okay. Got you. And is it as cold as they say it is?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Oh yeah, no doubt. Now, first of all, you seem like a pretty young dude. So would it be safe for me to say that you haven't had a long, I should say, years worth of experience in what you're doing, or have you always been doing as far as you can tell, you can remember?
Well, I think maybe the grays don't show up very well on camera. But yeah, I started listening to Christian hip hop in the 90s.
Oh, okay.
And so I was listening to it, started writing around 2004.
Okay.
And then, depending how much detail you want to go into,
as much as you want.
All right. So we'll talk about it. Yeah. So in university, which was like 2005 when I started there, started putting out some of my own music, and I had been influenced by a bunch of Christian hip hop artists before then, and started writing, put out my first EP in 2005. And then, Determination, it was just like, it was raw, but it was heartfelt,
Gotcha.
Had a very good response to that. 2006, I put out another EP. Over the course of that period of time, universities give you a lot of opportunities to perform variety shows. And so I kind of, made a little bit of a name for myself in that circuit. And
that's cool.
Ended up doing about 100 performances in 9 cities, and got to open for Manifest, during that era. But what happens is, you reach that point where I was finishing my undergrad and deciding, what's next. And I wanted to pursue graduate school, and music was impacting my grades. And ultimately I decided, I'll just kind of push it off, maybe make it a little bit of a hobby, but kind of drive forward on the schooling. So picked up a master's degree, picked up a second master's degree, started a career, a family. And it was only, more than a decade later, 2019, that I was just like, I started getting the itch. I don't know how to describe it, but
no description needed, trust me.
I just started feeling the pull of music again. And part of that came from feeling like I didn't have a lot of time. which is kind of ironic. But
Wow.
you know, when you have a young family,
Yeah.
all the responsibilities, career, everything,
Right.
I was like, man, I don't have a lot of time. And I was like, I need to do something for me. You know, I need to do something that, like, you know, I need to redeem my time, that with this little space of time I have, I want to do something meaningful with it.
Right.
So I started writing again in 2019, kind of not really having an end goal, but just kind of started writing a little bit. And
wow.
Then 2020 kind of built towards putting out my first EP with under my actual name.
Right.
You know,
oh, okay.
my name's
so
Kofi Khae, but
okay,
Kofi
gotcha.
Khae, you know, I turned the K into like it's almost like a phonetic K.
Right. Oh, okay.
You know, when I was 19, I went by Detox, you know, 2005, 2006.
Oh, okay, that was going to be my next question.
Yeah. You know, it's a little bit like, you know, Andy Mineo being C Light or Derek Minor being Pro. You know, you sort of, you know, you grow out of that, and so 2020 released an EP, and that's kind of been the start of a new musical journey for me, and it's been beautiful because there's not. I mean, people arrive at music from different places, and for some, there's sort of this sense of like, you know, I don't have a plan B, I have to make it.
Right.
And for me, fortunately, I'm blessed. I'm in a good place. I have, you know, I have a good career. I don't have any pressure other than my desire to make good music.
Right.
And so I can just enjoy the journey. And I don't have to have any of the competitiveness sometimes that comes, like for some people, when they feel like, you know, someone's taking food off their table, you know, if you listen to my music, you're not listening, you know, you're not listening to their music. So sometimes people can have some sensitivities that I don't have. Right. So, you know, obviously I want to, like, I'm committed to, you know, improving my craft and leveling up with every release, you know, making better music. But I love promoting other musicians, you know, so.
And that's good. That's good, because then you're letting people know that you're not just an artist. You're not just somebody that's trying to do something, you know, just because you're like really trying to be, you know, the top, but you're also trying to support. And that's a major thing. I was just talking to somebody about that the other day, and it is a major thing that I think is kind of missing from, you know, certain elements of music in general, let alone gospel and CHH. And I'm not sure why. I'm not sure why that is. You know what I mean? Like you said, you made a comment a minute ago about, you know, people thinking that other people are taking food off their table. It's like, it's not really like, if it's that serious, then you might want to find another way to do it. You know what I mean? Like then it kind of almost doesn't become about the love of it anymore. It becomes like, okay, well, no, I need this to survive. It's like, well, you know, there are other ways that you could do that. You know what I mean? But, and I get it, you know, a lot of times people get caught up in the things that they're doing, or they get caught up in the industry portion of it, you know what I mean? Because they got people in their ear, you know, and that's kind of how the industry does, you know what I mean? And that's kind of sad when it comes to that, but especially in the body, you know, the body of Christ. I mean, I know that that's just something that I think that we've been lacking a great deal, you know, and then we see it when it comes to, like, you know, different people, you know, different conglomerates as well.
Yes, different camps sometimes.
Yeah, and you know, we definitely want to make that change with that. You know what I mean? Especially when it comes to, you know, our craft. You know, we want our craft to be seen. We want to be noticed, but at the same time, the main thing we want is for that ministry to get out there.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that there, in a way, what's important is you're sort of talking about a little bit of a culture shift. And I've met so many artists that have that same mindset, of building, because for me, and I complain about this all the time. So you're about to hear me on one of my, like, my pet things that frustrates me is I go, you know, there are millions of Christians, right? And I say, hip hop is the most popular genre of music in the world right now.
Sure is.
But Christian hip hop is very small, like, relatively speaking.
Yeah.
And so I'm always probing that question of what is it about Christian hip hop that, you know, what's the lid, you know, like why hasn't it reached its potential? And I think that there's lots of different pieces to that, but I think part of it needs to be a little bit more of a team mindset, you know, like if everyone's coming at it from the standpoint of like, we're not in competition with each other, we are as a collective trying to build the kingdom of God in various lanes. You know, there's all different kinds of Christian hip hop, right? Like lots of different lanes, lots of different audiences. But if everyone's trying to build and like, you know, if I know someone hears my music, but they don't really like it that much, well, you know what? I know another dope artist who you might like much better than my music, right?
Exactly.
And so I'm trying to push somebody else. And it's like, if we're all doing that, then I think that we can see some progress in the community for sure.
Yeah, oh, most definitely. And you know, I think in the end, not even I think, I know, I'm sure in the end, God's going to deal with all of that anyways.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, whether he deals with it with us in the natural or in the spiritual, either way, it's going to get dealt with. Most definitely. Going back to what you were saying before about the name that you went by before, you said it was Detox, right?
Yes.
So how did that come about? And then when did you start feeling like I need to change from this to who I really am? Yeah.
So in that era, you know, the early 2000s, it was very common for people to have like a pseudonym, a stage name, and that's still common today. Yes. And for me, you know, I was searching for a name, and I really landed on that idea of detox in terms of like, you know, getting the toxins out of your system, you know, like helping someone come to a place where, you know, they're getting the negative out and getting some of the positive in. And so that was where I was at with that. But, you know, when I hung it all up for over a decade, you know, had my indefinite hiatus, when I came back, it just didn't seem to represent where I was. It's like a little bit of the grown man status of being like, that's not how I would frame things anymore. And also I think, if I think about my early 20s versus my early 30s, I had a lot more bravado and a lot more a lot more swagger when I was 19, 20, and and thinking I was going to take over the world versus being in my 30s and being like, there's something that comes with the maturity, and I think for most people, hopefully, is some humility, right? Where it's you know, this is me, you know, and I'm trying to be me. I'm trying to create art, but you're going to hear about Kofi.
Oh yeah, most definitely. And I know one thing that people should not ever feel comfortable with is letting a year, sometimes a year, but over a decade go by and you're still the same person that you were a decade before. You know what I mean? If you can't grow, then how do you expect to grow?
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah.
So, man, okay, I get you, man. So then, if your influences, you were talking a little bit about your influences a little bit ago. Who would you say are at least the top 3 influences that you would say, there was like no choice for me to listen to these people. Like I had to listen to these people because it was something that was just, you know, that sparked the fire. So who are those people for you?
So I'd say my first foray into Christian rap music was by way of DC Talk.
Okay.
Yeah, because I mean they weren't a hip hop group, but they had some hip hop pieces and portions in there. And so I remember I don't know.
I'm sorry, Toby Mac, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So you know, when DC Talk was out, they had a breakthrough song, Jesus Freak. It was like 96 or something like that. And it was like a rock anthem, but it had like this hip hop piece.
Right.
And I remember memorizing that as a kid and just like spitting those lines. I still remember them now, you know, and it's like, that was this initial introduction to how you could use sort of the spoken word, and you could tell stories, and you could communicate in a way through hip hop that is a lot more direct than just about any other kind of music.
Right.
And then from there, I plunged deep into the cross movement. And I mean, the cross movement in the late 90s, early 2000s, absolutely revolutionary, right? Like the way that they brought, as a collective, the way that they brought a consistent level of excellence, the quality of their music all around, like, the beats, the rhyming, everything was just beyond what people knew Christians could do at that time. And so the cross movement totally was very influential. And during that era, it was an era where there was no ambiguity in what you were talking about. It's like the cross movement was the cross movement, and and like every line, every song was was absolutely just proclaiming the name of Christ. And they were preachers and pastors and theologians, all wrapped into rappers. And so that was very influential for me when I was coming up and discovering Christian hip hop. And that was still an era I found in some of my church circles where some people didn't get Christian hip hop. And they were like, oh, rap music is of the devil. And it's like, hold on, have you heard, look at this lyric sheet. Try to explain to me how this is of the devil, because they're preaching some theology here. And I think that in a way it had to start there before it could branch it to some of the areas that it is now. So the cross movement were, I would say the most influential on me. And there were a bunch of other artists at that time that I was listening to. KJ52, like as a kid growing up.
Now, he was my first. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go. Yeah. My first introduction to CHH, period. Because I never heard of anyone else before him. You know what I mean? And to me, it was like, okay, wait a minute. Number one, you're a white dude. You're doing hip hop. You know what I'm saying? And again, I'm from Cali, so you know what we knew, you know what I mean? When it came to hip hop, you know what we knew. So when I started to listen to it, I'm like, okay, this is pretty good. Like, he was actually like he actually made me feel like there was some substance to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, most definitely. But please continue. I apologize.
Yeah. So KJ52, and it's funny because one of the other ones who I would say from that era was T-Bone. And T-Bone was from Cali, right? So, and that was a whole other world, that whole West Coast world. I didn't know anything about it, but hearing T-Bone's music, and of course, as someone who grew up in the suburbs, with no knowledge of gang culture, even though he was coming from a completely different world, I was still able to appreciate his ministry and how he was speaking to his culture. And then lastly, before I, rhyme off like 50 different names, Lecrae, because, I put out my first album, I think before Lecrae put out Real Talk, or right about the same time, and shortly after that, he put out After the Music Stops. And it was a game changer for Christian hip hop. Like it was almost like there's like the pre-Lecrae and the post-Lecrae era. When that single dropped with Triply Jesus Music, like it just it was like a bomb went off in youth groups, right? Where all of a sudden it was like, what is this? You have kids in the suburbs of Ottawa listening to like Southern hip hop music from Atlanta and Texas. And, there was another group, Grape Tree Records, that had a bunch of artists that I was listening to. So I got deep into Christian hip hop like as a preteen and never came out. Like I fell in love with it as an art form. That's cool. I always used to say as a teenager that I liked my music way better than the people who were listening to secular music like their music. Because it's like I'd be sitting next to somebody in class. They're listening to 50 Cent or something, and 50 Cent's talking about a life they know nothing about, they can't relate to.
But somehow.
And so it's like there's only so much they can enjoy it, right? Like they can vibe with the beat and whatever, but you're from the suburbs of Ottawa, like you can't relate to that lifestyle. Whereas I was listening to like The Truth, My Testimony. And he's talking about how he grew up in a youth group and he doesn't have a wild story, but the blood of the lamb that saved my soul, that's my testimony. And I'm like, man, that's me. I'm that guy. And so the music resonated with me in such a way that like, I loved it.
Wow. And that's amazing to hear too, because you don't realize just how much, just how different, I should say, that music can be when it comes to the ears of different people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's only because they're hearing different things. Like you were just naming off a few people. Like I'll say the truth. Like the truth, when I first heard him, he definitely, went to picked a good name for himself, because I felt like he was definitely the truth. Well, still is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I always thought that he almost sounded a little like Jay-Z. You know what I mean?
Yeah, at the time, yeah.
Yeah. But if you get someone else who's listening to like 50 Cent or anyone else, Snoop or whoever, they might not get with it because they already know it off the bat, especially depending on who it's coming from. So like if you introduce it to them, they're going to look, oh, well, we already know what Kofi's about. So, that's probably Christian stuff, we don't want to hear that. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that a lot of people they just don't want to hear anything that's going to eventually convict them in any way, shape or form.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? And I think that's part of the love that a lot of people have for secular music. And not to mention that it is good, the way that it sounds, you know what I mean? There are a lot of it though, there is a lot of it that can be pretty bad and be real negatively influential on you. You know what I mean? I remember telling the story before when it came to 50 Cent. I listened to Get Rich or Die Trying like over and over. That was constantly in my deck in my car, and you couldn't tell me that I wasn't gangster.
Right.
But I didn't grow up like that. Exactly.
Riding,
it was that feeling, you know what I'm saying? Like all of a sudden, you roll up on somebody, if they looked at you the wrong way, you know what I mean? You about ready to do something, you know what I mean? And I'm thinking, well, wait a minute, I wasn't raised like this. My parents didn't teach me to do this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But once you come out of that and realize, okay, wait a minute, it's just music, but at the same time, it could be real influential in a bad way. So, I may need to do something else. And I know for me, like when I got saved in 2004, I was like, okay, it was literally like, I got to shut the light off, period. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It didn't really work that way, unfortunately, but it was a learning experience. So my question to you on that is that, did you ever feel that way? Because I mean, if you really listen to only one style of music, whether it be CHH or gospel, and you didn't really get too deep into secular, could you really say that you felt that there was any kind of change once you started doing it?
Yeah. No, I can't really directly relate to that experience, because as you said, like I was very much in my lane right from age 13, 14. And so it was the kind of situation where anytime I would hear secular music, it would almost be like jarring to my ears.
Right.
I'd be like, hold on, they allowed to say that?
Right.
And even like, if you think of just your basic music that's on mainstream radio that, kids are bobbing their heads to.
Yeah.
And I'm someone who I'm someone who pays attention to words and lyrics.
Yes.
And I instantly go, whoa, they're allowed to say this to our children? Who's filtering this? Who's censoring this? Because it's, and for people who are not at the place that I'm at, they're able to just kind of just let it sort of wash over them and think that it doesn't have an influence. But from my vantage point, every time I hear it, it's almost like this shock of like, like, whoa, like it's like a splash of cold water when I hear a lot of mainstream music. Yeah. One of the things I do like about this era is because of, streaming services and kind of the openness to independent artists, people don't have to listen to whatever song is put on the radio.
Right.
And so there's an opportunity for independent artists, for small indie labels to directly reach audiences in ways that they couldn't before.
Oh yeah.
Because I remember at the time when the Cross Movement, I remember they had a music video for Huh What, and it was like their big single off of I think the House of Relatives album. What you know about this? Huh? What? Huh? What? Like, I mean, at the time, the track was bananas. It was crazy, and they were trying to get it played on BET. Like there was no YouTube, you couldn't just you couldn't just watch their music video. And so they were fighting the powers that be, just trying to get a little bit of airtime for Christian hip hop, because, like you just couldn't find it.
Right.
And so when we found out, oh man, like BET played it once, it was like, wow, like this is crazy.
Yeah, we got the one play.
And yeah.
Yeah.
So now that you're seeing some Christian artists who are able to directly reach people, like it's a blessing for sure.
Yeah, most definitely. Definitely. Well, listen, I want to definitely transition into your latest single, Broken Record, man.
Yeah, knowledge for the whosoever can't lose. At the center printed on my sweater. Good news. Had it sound like a broken record. Ooh, like a broken record. Ooh, like a broken record.
First of all, I want to tell you ask you who did the artwork for that song?
Oh man, that was a young dude from Saskatchewan, Canada. Phenomenal visual artist.
Yeah.
He goes by Thoughtful Sketches. If you want to look him up on IG,
most definitely I will.
At Thoughtful Sketches.
Okay.
And how I discovered him was, you know how Instagram's always suggesting various people for you, and so somehow one of his sketches came up, and I think it was a sketch of No Big Deal, and I was like, who did that? Who did that sketch? And so I went and then I looked at his grid, and I saw like sketches of Andy Mineo and sketches of like of Hulvey and a bunch of other CHH artists. Nice. And then I started scrolling down his grid, and then I started seeing Toronto Raptors folks, and I was like, oh, dude, like CHH and Toronto Raptors?
I'm in the game.
Interesting. Yeah, it's like, I like CHH and I like Toronto Raptors.
Right.
So then I connected with them, and just a phenomenal visual artist. And I hope to work with him again on future projects. It's very great to work with, and a real talent. So.
Oh yeah, most definitely. But the actual song in itself, I'm not gonna lie, like that specific type of vibe was something I was never into a few years back. Like it, and mostly because it always reminded me of certain secular artists. So it was like, I didn't never really got into it before, but slowly but surely a lot of things have been growing on me. And when I came across your song, I'm like, oh man, this is cool. Like not only am I hearing like every bit and piece of it, you know what I mean? But I'm also feeling it, you know what I mean? And it's fun, you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Like the song sounds fun, you know what I mean?
Yes.
But what I want to get from you is, number one, what was the actual whole influence for the song, and what would you say is one of your favorite, or one of the illest lines from that song that you would just be like, okay, yeah, this definitely sealed it for me? Yeah.
So first, I want to give a shout out to Avila. Out of Florida for the production, because that's really where it started, and that's often where it starts for me. Is I start by going to various producers whose work I like, and just kind of going to their beat stores and checking stuff out.
Right.
And I didn't go to the beat with a concept. I just I was like, oh man, I like this beat, so I started working with it a bit, and I'm not sure exactly how the thought came to mind, but it was just like this like single line, I'm a broken record. Just kind of popped into my head. And then I was like, like, let me work with that concept a little bit. And, for people who are familiar with the term, a record, if it's damaged, it skips and it repeats the same thing over and over again. And so it's a slang phrase to say that something's like a broken record, because it repeats itself all the time. And it has a little bit of a subtext, typically of something being irritating or annoying.
Right.
And I wanted to take that concept and run with it a little bit to talk about being bold in our faith and taking every opportunity we can to talk about Jesus. But there's that subtext as well of, oftentimes Christians are afraid to share their faith because they're worried about how it's going to be received.
Right.
And it's funny, I played the song for my sister, and she's like, oh man, I like this song. She's like, but broken records are kind of annoying, right? And I'm like, that's the point. And the point is not that I want to be annoying, or that I want anyone to be annoying in how they share their faith, but it's more flipping it on its head to say, don't let the fear that someone won't receive this well prevent you from sharing this most vital message. So really wanted to put it in like a fun, lighthearted way, but a little bit of a reminder that at the end of the day, there's good news that we have to share. And for me, part of how I wrote it was a little bit of, telling my story a little bit about being someone who was sold out to Christ from a young age.
Right.
So I opened by saying, like, I was 16 living Tolstoy, War and Peace. They're just calling me the church boy. Cold stares, man, I had to really layer up. Others showed me love. Kofi send them prayers up. And it was really this idea that at age 16, it was War and Peace. Like, there were some people who, and I remember some of those people who blew me off, who were like, this guy, like, this guy's a church boy. I don't want anything to do with him. All because of what you stood
for, right?
Yes, and then at the time I was like fearless. I had, before there was Christian merch, I had Christian merch, and so I was like, I had Hallelujah wear and these different these different things, and there were some who really just did not want to rock with me because of that. Right. And then there were other people who would come at me and be like, hey, like, I've got this situation in my life. Can you pray for me? Can you know? And so I experienced both sides of that. And then I continue the story by talking a little bit about my vibe in university. And I was like, I was preaching over beats in like 2005 on my campus, making waves, skip the low tide. I did not know how to chill, skip the lo-fi. Every bar going hard for the most high.
Yeah.
Because in university, as like, I was just like, every song I wrote was just like, was hard hitting.
Yeah.
And I didn't know how to like, make it ambiguous and kind of talk about love that might, a song that might possibly be about God. But I was just like very evangelistic in my music. And,
gotcha.
And it's interesting, as I was writing it, I was reflecting on how, when I think about that stage of my life, and then I think about now, I'm desiring to get back to a place of more boldness. Right. I think about myself at 17, about myself at 19, and how open I was about my faith, and how now I'm much more likely to just kind of keep things to myself. And so, in a way, the song is both fun, but for me, it's a little bit aspirational, because I'm also saying, like, I want to be that guy again. Like, I want to find opportunities to talk about the difference that Jesus has made in my life. Obviously, in like a in a respectful and and kind, uplifting way. But to really get back to a place where I sound like a broken record.
Right. And sometimes I think, and this is definitely going to be an I think major. I think what happens is that we tend to have a certain amount of zeal when we first start. So my whole idea of it was, well, I'm supposed to do this because God said, go ye therefore. So I'm going to have to go ye and therefore, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there is a certain boldness that you have that you end up feeling like, I have to do this because this is what God said. This is what God said. Like you said, you become a broken record. I think that over time, what happens though, is that sometimes it could be shame. Sometimes it could be shyness, that change from boldness. I think other times with some people, which something that I think that I was kind of struggling with myself, was whether or not I'm not as bold, because I know that not everybody that I'm going to be bold to is going to receive the message that I feel I have when it comes to spreading the gospel. You know what I mean? So it's almost like I feel like, well, why waste the time? You know what I mean? But at the same time, it's now thinking of it in a way of like, not wanting to waste the time, but more so not wanting to feel like I'm going to be a burden on someone. So let me wait for God to give me the perfect time for me to say something. You know what I mean?
Yes.
The perfect time for me to stand up for something. You know what I mean? Because people know you. When they hear your name, they know about you. Right. You know what I mean? They know exactly what it is that makes you tick. They know exactly what it is you live for, what it is you stand for. You know what I mean? And it's not just your family, right?
Yes.
Having said that, they know that there's certain things that you're not going to do. So why bring it up? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Why bring it to you? You know what I mean? So it's kind of the same thing. If we know that there's certain people out there, like we all have friends. I have like friends that I used to be in a group with. I have other friends that I used to hang out with or whatever. We talk every once in a while, but for the most part, I'm not steady, like trying to, comprise a new way to come at them and tell them about themselves, and you know what I mean, let them know they're going to hell. You know what I mean? Like that's not for me to do. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
The scripture, just because the scripture said go ye therefore doesn't mean we got to go ye therefore with Thor's hammer. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So sure. I think that that's one of those things that we eventually do. It doesn't mean we don't have any more zeal. It doesn't mean we don't have the drive. It doesn't mean we don't strive to have that boldness, but it's more or less, okay, let's be strategic now.
Yes, there's, for sure. I think a good chunk of that is wisdom, you know, and it's being effective in looking for the right opportunities in the right spaces. Yeah. But I know that in my life, there have also been, like a softball lobbed at me that I feel like I completely fumbled, kind of a thing, where it's like, where those opportunities present themselves, I want to step right into them. And, there's a scripture that says, be prepared, in or out of season to give, the reason for your faith. And I want to be more like that, for sure.
Yeah. Oh yeah, most definitely. I do want to go back to the song for a second, because the feature that you had on there.
Yes.
Man, yes. Let me tell you something. So real quick. So the day that I hit you up about doing this interview, I had also hit Stephen up.
Yes.
Stephen Bell, man, I started looking up his music because again, I love searching for new music, right? So I'm listening to it and I'm like, oh man, this is cool. Let me see what else he got. You know what I mean? And I was so pleased with what I heard.
Phenomenal talent.
Yes. Most definitely. But he did tell me a little bit, because he did say that, he knew that we were going to talk. So he did tell me a little bit. So you guys kind of grew up together a little back in the day, or, when did you guys meet?
Yeah. So it's not so much grew up together, but more ran in similar circles. And so, knew each other, knew of each other. Right. We were both making music in those mid 2000s. And so like we were acquaintances. Right. And then, so, I had my long hiatus, and he stayed active with music. Yeah. And so when I restarted making music in sort of this new era, sort of we bumped into each other on Instagram, and it was like, bro, and there was this instant sense of like, this is one of the first people I want to work with, and it's also now in this era, I find it so much easier to work with people because, you don't even have to be in the same city as someone, you can collaborate, and we're seeing that spirit in CHH of all the collaborations and people working together. And so I loved working with Stephen, and we got together, and it's like we're on a similar wavelength. Both of us are people who are not ego driven, and we're able to just connect, and Stephen's very active in ministry in his church. He's a minister. Right. And I was a young adult pastor for 9 years. And so we have some, we have some, definitely have some things in common there. And so being able to actually, one of the most interesting things for me was asking him questions about the evolution of music, in the sense that he stayed in the game at a time when I was just kind of doing other things. Right. And so there's a shift, right? Where, for example, in 2006, I put out an EP, I printed 1,000 CDs and I sold them, Nice. And so as a like whatever 20, 21 year old, I made okay money off my music. Right. It definitely more than paid for itself. And then you move forward to the streaming era, and it's a whole different ballgame. Totally, everything about it has changed, where it's like, hold on, it's like, how many million streams do I need to recoup my investment in this album? And all of a sudden your mind goes like, what? And so I understand how people who, are trying to make a living as musicians, they have to have multiple streams of revenue. You have to have all these various ways, because generally speaking, the streaming platforms are typically not going to do it for the average for the average listener. So just kind of chatting with him about some of the shifts and the transitions in the whole world of music. And then the other thing that's changed so much is how promotion is done. because I'm someone who did not have social media, up until 2020. Like
wow, really?
Yeah. Like I just,
okay.
I like to keep a low profile, and
I feel you.
I'm not very much into being in the public eye.
Right.
So I didn't have Instagram. I didn't have Facebook. I just,
okay.
I just kind of did my own thing. And so all of a sudden it was like, okay, I'm making music. How are people even going to hear it?
Right.
I've got to create this thing called an Instagram account. And so it's like, I felt like this dinosaur who's like, how does this technology work? And I had to find some cool friends. I had to find some cool friends and ask them, like, how does, how do I engage with these platforms
right.
to connect with fans? And now I really appreciate it. I really value being able to, and my favorite part about the platform is being able to discover other musicians and promote their stuff, connect with people that way, be an encourager. So it's been cool.
Here. Oh yeah, most definitely. It's been real good. And it's good that you picked now to do it. You know what I mean? Otherwise, I would have missed out on hearing this record and whatever else you may have to do.
Yes.
Yeah, most definitely. What I would like to hear, is in case it's something that you guys might want to do, but an actual collaboration album between you two. Because I think you guys complement each other so well on that song. Yeah, most definitely. So, keep that in your spirit, in your heart.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think we've already said, like, Lord willing, we'll get a chance to work with each other again. Like, it was a good time. It was a good time for sure.
Most definitely. I definitely appreciate your time that you're giving me right now. But before I let you go, there's two things. Last question would be, what would you say was at least one of the illest line that you had ever heard that made an impact on you?
One of the illest lines I ever heard. I think it would be probably from My Story by The Truth. God kept me in my youth, I give him all the glory. Thought my story wasn't dope, but now I know the blood of the Lamb that saved my soul. That's my testimony. And I think I mentioned it before, how I, as a young person, I had heard a lot of people telling stories of like coming out of, a really difficult situation and finding Christ.
Right.
And I was someone who was blessed to have, a praying mom who brought me to church. And, so I didn't experience, a lot of things that other people did. And so you do have those questions about the sort of the quality of your testimony.
Yeah.
But to be able to say, the blood of the Lamb that saved my soul, that's my testimony.
Right.
That resonated with me, and it spoke to me at like a really critical time of my life to sort of be like, you know what, like it's the greatest story ever told.
Right.
And we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony.
Yes. Most definitely. Definitely enjoyed our conversation, and to make sure, since you're brand new on social media and everything, why don't you go ahead and let people know where they could reach you on social media and where they can find your music at?
Definitely. So the music, of course, is available on all your streaming platforms, and my IG is at kofikae.music. That's KOFIKHAE, Kofikae.music. And definitely I'm excited for the future. I feel like I'm just getting going. I'm working on the next single right now.
Awesome.
I'm looking forward to, I don't want to say too much about it, but I'm excited about it. It's coming together nicely. And so I'll, in due time, people who follow me on the socials will hear about it.
Oh, most definitely, man. And they'll definitely hear about it right here on the illest lines. Most definitely.
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
But definitely everyone out there, go ahead and follow him right now on social media. Also, don't forget to pick up and stream, buy, whatever you got to do to make sure that you support this gentleman right here. Go get Broken Record right now featuring Stephen Bell.
Yes.
Most definitely. All right, man. Well, much love to you. And honestly, if there's anything that you need from me, let me know, man.
For sure. Let's stay in touch. I appreciate it.
Will do. All right, man. God bless you.
God bless. Bye.